Greetings. Last night, I watched Pastor Kelly Richardson's most recent video on the We Woke Now account, which I understood to be his second installment in his ongoing series on urban apologists. As I've touched on previously, my interests are primarily linguistic in nature, and therefore what I was looking for was something that might deal with issues related to language, such as the pews at the First African Baptist Church or Lashwan Kodash. However, as was clear from the title, the focus was going to be on the entry on Ham in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, and the video was quite focused on that one subject, so there wasn't much on anything else. However, there was a brief portion which is of interest to me on the distinction between the words Israeli and Israelite. So I'd like to play that real quick here. Consider this clip and then I'll share my thoughts.
Another example, Israeli. The Ashkenazi Jews primarily refer to themselves as Israeli because they are not original or aboriginal to the land of Egypt. Let's go to the etymology dictionary definition of Israeli. It says, citizen of the state of Israel, 1948. From Israel plus Hebrew national designation suffix, the I. It goes on to say, it distinguishes the citizens of the modern state from the ancient people who had been known in English since the 14th century.
Okay, with that in mind, some might recall that in a previous video, when Pastor Kelly Richardson appealed to the writings of Charles William Wall, I was able to show a tweet from years prior which already dealt with that subject. And I think this is going to be a common theme in some of my responses to Pastor Kelly Richardson, as on this subject too, I'd like to say I have a tweet on that. In other words, I'd like to show you a tweet I wrote a couple of years ago on the subject of Israelites preferring the word Israelite to the word Israeli. And here's the relevant tweet from January of 2018. I'll share a link in the video description. The tweet reads as follows, quote, 2 Samuel 17:25 in the Masoretic and Septuagint versions. People who insist on being called Israelite rather than Israeli unwittingly forfeit a biblical Hebrew term, ironically in favor of a construction with Greek roots, just despite Zionism's appropriation of it, end quote. And then the tweet appended an image which showed the Masoretic and Septuagint readings of the relevant verse, which we can look at now. So here is 2 Samuel, 17th chapter, and I'm going to go scroll down to the bottom of the page to the 25th verse, where you find the word Ha-Yisraeli. As you see right there, the hey at the beginning is just a definite article, and going over to the Septuagint version, you find here the word Israelites, and that's where the word Israelite comes from. We get it from Latin, but that construction comes ultimately from the Greek. Full disclosure, there's a bit of controversy with 2 Samuel 17:25 because this corresponding verse at 1 Chronicles 2:17, which I'm turning to now, seems to have the same person being called an Ishmaelite. So I'll show you right here in the 17th verse. Instead of Ha-Yisraeli, you have the word Ha-Ishmaeli. And some would argue that one verse should be corrected in light of the other, and there's the alternative reading, Ha-Yishmaeli. But even if you prefer the reading Yishmaeli, that's clearly the word Yishmael with a yod at the end, and from that we can form this corresponding construction for Israelites, which would be the word Israel, with the same yod at the end, which would be Yisraeli or Israeli. So we can infer the word Yisraeli from the word Yishmaeli. But whatever the case, there are other verses where this word appears. Hence why I've turned to the 24th chapter of Leviticus. I'm going to look at verse 10. As in that verse, you once again find the word Ha-Yisraeli, specifically the construction Ish Ha-Yisraeli, the Israeli man. So I'll point to it here. Here you see the word Ish, man, and then the next word is Ha-Yisraeli, the Israelite man, the Israeli man. And in this case, there's no textual controversy. And for this verse too, we can turn to the Septuagint and show the word Israelites. That's where you get that "ite" ending from, that suffix "ite." We get it from Latin, but it comes from the Greek. And here you go. There's the word Israelites. Now, at this point, I suspect that proponents of Lashwan Kodash might object that they don't pronounce the relevant word Israel or Yisrael, rather they pronounce it Yasher Allah.
Hey, Yasher Allah! Yasher Allah!
And so if they pronounce the word Yasher Allah instead of Israel, then it follows that They would likewise pronounce the word with the yod at the end as Yashra'Allah rather than Israeli. However, this sort of objection would merely presuppose Lashon Kodash, which, with all due respect, is without foundation, without evidence from antiquity to support it. And as luck would have it, here too I can say, I have a tweet on that. And here is that tweet, which I wrote more than 5 years ago, and again, I'll post a link in the video description. The salient portion reads, quote, UPKers and proponents of Lashon Kodash claim that this word is pronounced Yashra'Allah. And then I show various renderings. The pointing in the Masoretic text implies Yisrael. The Quran has Israel. The various Greek transliterations in the Septuagint and the New Testament, and I could have also said Josephus and Philo render it Israel. The Peshitta has Israel. The Vulgate has Israel. Even the King James Bible, so beloved by many, but not all, but nonetheless many proponents of Lashon Kodash, the King James Bible of 1611 renders it Israel. And then I close with this question. Were all these sources using Yiddish too? Now, you can say that you don't agree with the King James Bible or the Vulgate or the Peshitta or the Masoretic text or the Quran, but are you also going to say that the ancient Greek transliterations in the Septuagint and the New Testament, in Josephus and Philo, that all of them got the transliteration wrong? You can play that game if you want to, but I would put it bluntly this way. We have ancient evidence of the word being vocalized Israel. You have no ancient evidence in favor of the idea that the word is supposed to be vocalized Yashra'Allah. And if you doubt that that yod at the end is pronounced E, we could gain insight from ancient transliterations of, for example, the word Arabi in the Septuagint rendering of Nehemiah 2:19 and Nehemiah 6:1. Or we could just generally, look for insight in other Semitic languages, like with the Arabic word Arabi, or even the Ge'ez word Arabi. As such would be sufficient for understanding how these constructions are used. Whatever the case, I'll sum up as follows. The word Israeli is an ancient biblical Hebrew term. Meanwhile, the word Israelite is a Latin and Greek construction, which is to say, when you prefer that suffix "ite" over the suffix "e", you're unwittingly declaring that you prefer a suffix that's rooted in Latin and Greek rather than a biblical Hebrew suffix. Now, mind you, I personally am not hostile to Latin and Greek, but for you guys who insist that you're going back to the ancient Hebrew and you're moving away from the Latin and Greek, this sort of thing is awkward. And so too, it's awkward to forfeit the biblical Hebrew term in favor of these Greek and Latin constructions simply because modern Zionism has appropriated that biblical Hebrew term. And at this point, I'd like to make a quick point about One West history. However, as a disclaimer, I am not asserting that Pastor Kelly Richardson is part of the One West spectrum. Rather, this is a quick segue. And what I want to say here is that when One Westers moved away from the word Israeli in favor of the word Israelite, they were unwittingly moving away from the Hebrew. Originally, One West had names like the Israeli School of Tanakh, the Israeli School of Universal Practical Knowledge, and the Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge. Then the groups which descended from that took on names like the Israelite Church of God and Jesus Christ, or the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. That said, I'll close here. In closing, I want to thank Pastor Kelly Richardson for ever so briefly touching on a subject which has been of interest to me for years and therefore inspiring this brief video. I hope others find it interesting, and as always, I look forward to the comments of others. God bless.